So thank you everyone so much for having me. I am delighted to be here. Anytime I have the opportunity to talk to a group or a room full of amazing women, chingonas, I always say yes because it gives me energy. And, you know, usually I get invited to ask about very tactical topics, right? When and how to approach investors, how to compound revenue, how to bootstrap your way to revenue, and all those things, which are very important. But this time I actually asked Denise and the team if I could actually talk about a different topic, because I think it's very relevant and very important, particularly now. You see, as entrepreneurs, it's easy to get excited when we go to pitches like this, right? When we go to events like this, it's easy to get excited when we launch our startup, or we close that first customer, or we raise that round of funding if you happen to be one of the 3% of women that raises venture capital. It's super excited. The problem with that hype, though, is that it doesn't usually last long, right? You're lucky if it lasts a couple of days. So because that hype is temporary, you know, we often think, well, you know, if I just raise that round of funding, if I just launch my startup, if I just get this customer to validate my solution, all my problems are going to go away. And for those of you in the room that are entrepreneurs, we know that that's not true, because when you're building a business, problems never go away, right? They just evolve. As your company matures, our problems don't go away. They just become a new set of challenges. In fact, it's more likely when you're in a startup that you're feeling like you're drowning. Everybody else is ahead of you and you're feeling like you're drowning. And what happens in those instances is that we start comparing ourselves to other founders or other people. Yes or no? Like, type in the chat if you've done this, if you're an entrepreneur. And because you're feeling like you're drowning and you're seeing somebody on Twitter or somebody on Forbes or whatever outlet saying that they just raised more money than you did, or they're hiring, then we start saying, oh my gosh, they're better than me and I'm a failure. And you start internalizing all of these feelings. And even if you're succeeding, you're still feeling like you're drowning, because we're constantly, as founders, learning new things. We're if you figure out revenue, now you have to figure out taxes. If you figure out, you know, product market fit, now you have to figure out insurance. And we're constantly growing and learning, which often makes us feel, again, like we're falling behind, or that we have to produce more, or we have to go faster. And what happens is we get into this hustle mode, right? We get into this hustle mode and we get into this race to win, especially if you're going after venture capital. And this often leads to burnout, you know, because tell me last time you did something for fear of missing out, or last time you did something measuring success based on somebody else's ruler. Tell me when was the last time that actually worked for you. It doesn't. It actually leads to burnout. And that's what I want to talk to you today. Burnout and emotional fatigue. Because burnout is the #1 reason why women entrepreneurs are quitting their startup. And it's the #1 reason why women in general in the workplace are leaving the workplace faster than any time before. And so I asked Denise and the team if I can talk about this, because I feel like, you know, if you ask any successful entrepreneur, we will all tell you that being an entrepreneur is an intellectual sport, right? And in fact, 80%, if you ask any successful entrepreneur, or you listen to podcasts or whatever, they will tell you it's not that they were smarter. It's not that they raised more money. It was that they were mentally strong. They were mentally prepared to not deal with the hype and the excitement, but to deal with the hard times. And the problem that I see often now, especially in the media or even in events, is that if we do talk about mental health and wellness, we usually leave it at the end, or we leave it as a side note, or like we do meditation in the morning and then we just forget about it. But I'm just going to say this again, 80% of success in a company has to do with how mentally prepare the founders and the lead team, not just the lead team, but everybody is to tackle the challenging parts. And so I want to talk to you about ways in which we can maybe prevent getting burnouts, or if we haven't, how do we get back to the best version of ourselves? So number one, I want to do away. I love the pitch that, what was her name? I think it was, I wrote it down because I want to connect with her, but she just pitched and she talked about mental health. Anyway, Cuéntame, right? Cuéntame was the name of the company, Regina. And, you know, the problem is that it is taboo. It is taboo within ourselves and within society, right? So, the first thing that we need to do is that there's zero judgment. I'm here to tell you that for the past 10 years, and even before that, for the past 10 years, I've been investing in coaching entrepreneurs from the idea stage all the way to I'm racing my Series A and B rounds. And I can tell you that all of us experience burnout, emotional fatigue, imposter syndrome, all of those things. So why do we have this idea that if we have it, we're less than, or that we're inadequate when everybody else has it? We need to internalize this and realize that all other entrepreneurs at some point or the other experience this. And the next thing that we need to know is we need to realize what triggers that, right? Denise talked about VEST. I'm the founder of VEST. Last year, as a result of the disproportionate effect that the pandemic had on women, I launched an organization to put together influential women across industries and sectors to build power collectively. And so we get coaching every month and all of this. And one of our coaches, Jen Fromm, who's amazing, gave us this exercise, which I challenge you to do, which was to recognize if you're getting emotional fatigue or burnout. Make a list of the 5 words or 10 words, however many you want. Make a list of the words that describe you when you're at your best self. So like when you're showing up, like today, me, I'm at my best self because I'm energized, right? And so like, please drop them up in the chat. So like what describes you when you're at your best selves? So for me, for example, I tend to be more caring. I tend to be more empathetic. I tend to be more energized. I tend to be bold, fearless. So that's one thing you need to do. On the opposite side, make a list of the things that, or the characteristics that describe you when you're at your most self. And let's be honest, in today's society, most companies, even ourselves, expect us to show up at our most selves, meaning at capacity, when we're at capacity and we're just doing everything because we have to. So make a list of all of the things that describe you when you are when you're at your most self. So like for me, and drop them out in the chat. I want to see yours. I'm being super vulnerable and I'm happy to share with you. But I can tell you that for me, for example, when I'm at my most and I'm at capacity, I tend to act completely the opposite as when I'm at my best. I tend to be detached. I tend to be sarcastic, which I'm here to tell you, being sarcastic, it's really energy draining. And I didn't realize that until I went through this exercise. I tend to be fearful, right? I tend to let fear kick in. And I also feel inadequate. Some of you said detached, antisocial. Some on the being the best version of yourself. Some of you said curious, engaged, affirming. That's right. And so, so do this. The things that describe you when you're at your best self and the things that describe you when you're at your most self. And then imagine a problem that you're having that's really hard, right? For us as founders, if you're raising, for example, if you're raising capital, look at the characteristics on your best self and look at your characteristics at your most self. Which ones do you want to be to actually talk to investors and get them excited about what you're building and get them to trust you and get them to de-risk in your company and make them believe that you're the right person to solve this problem so that they can put money into not just the company, but you as a founder to do it. Do this exercise because it's helped me. I'm here to learn with you and from you. So I'm not here to tell you, I can only tell you what's worked for me, but this has been very, very helpful for me to acknowledge the triggers that get me when I'm, kind of give me that red light that I'm getting into. I'm either already burned out or I'm getting there. And then What do we do to get out? So let's say that we are burnout or we're getting there. Managing your energy comes next, right? So managing your energy and setting boundaries. And that is super hard for all of us, especially women. If I'm being really vulnerable with you guys here, I'm Mexican. I was born and raised in Mexico, immigrant, came here, typical immigrant story, came here with my mother and sister when I was 13 years old, didn't know a lick of English. And so my culture and in my brain, my identity was very tied to productivity, right? To working hard. The typical, think of an immigrant story, and like that was me, right? I work hard, I show up, and if I don't show up, I'm not being a good immigrant and a good Mexican person. And every time I took a break, I still to this day feel guilty. So this is something that this is trauma that I brought into the workplace, I brought into my companies, and it's something that I continue to struggle. But I'm here to tell you that it's the best. We have to manage our energy, and we have to set boundaries, and we have to rest. That is not a luxury. It's just, again, if you get to your worst self, and I just describe you how I am, it's not me, but the things I do when I'm at my most self, I'm not going to be effective, right? So I'm learning to kind of internalize that as well. So here are some of the things that I do to manage my energy. I make a list, again, of all the things that drain my energy. For me, is social media. And I'm not saying that I go away from social media forever, but if I feel like I'm at my most and I'm negative and all of this stuff, I just take a break from social media. Trust me, that works almost immediately for me. I quit bro clubs. A lot of us still have to show up at bro clubs or good old boy clubs, whatever we want to call it. I try to stop going to those. Like, even if I have to, I say, I'm just going to take a break because I need to get back to my best version of myself. I stopped being judgmental. This was very, very hard for me in 2020 because we had an election, and because, do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? Do you vaccines and all of that? And, I'm true to myself. But then I started becoming very judgmental. And then I realized I was actually giving away energy. So I, again, put boundaries and saying, I'm not going to be judgmental. I stopped looking at politics and news because that's also super, it just drains my energy. And then I replace it. I make a list of things that I replace my energy with, things that actually give me energy, like coming here and talking to you all and listening to women building companies that are intentional. I love that. That gives me energy. Being around my family, being around friends, going outside and just planting, not doing anything else, but just like going outside, having a glass of wine. I make a list of that, and then I'm intentional about scheduling those things in my agenda. And something very important, again, this goes back to the boundaries. I cut ties with the things and relationships that drain that energy. I say no to meetings or speaking engagements that don't add anything to VAS's mission or Stitch Crew's mission. That's very hard for us. Again, if we start comparing ourselves and we get into that hustle mode and we start thinking that we're not going as fast as our peers or our colleagues, it's really hard to do, but it's really important to do, to set boundaries and to say no to things that really don't add anything to your startup, to you, and to your values. The other thing I would say is that discipline trumps motivation. I'm here, I do get motivated coming here and listening to everybody's stories, but motivation, again, is kind of like the hype. It only lasts so long, right? You come here, you get motivated, and it's super great. And then you get back home and you're like, well, hell, I'm back to where I started, right? So, again, I'm only speaking from my own experience, but what has worked for me is just to be disciplined. There's a great saying, I don't know who said it, but it's motivation is for amateurs, pros are discipline. And I really try to live by those values. So some of the daily habits that I'm working on is, I try to practice gratitude every day. That helps me with not being judgmental or not being negative or always thinking that I'm further behind than other people. I practice gratitude every day. I write 3 things I'm grateful for. I practice kindness and forgiveness to myself. So at the end of the day, I do assess like how did I do today? Was I true to myself? Was I true to my values? Did I actually move the needle? And if I'm not, I forgive myself. And that's hard for me to do because I'm one of my worst critics. But it's so funny that us, especially as women, we tend to be super self-critical And we talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to our friends or our colleagues or our team members. So why are we so ugly with ourselves? So I'm practicing that. That's one of the habits that I'm doing. And another thing is, if I'm having anxiety, I'm starting to ask myself, 10 years from now, am I even going to remember this? Is it even going to matter? And that gives me perspective. And I actually write it down, because if you don't write it down, it's hard for you to retain. And another thing that I do is accountability. When you're building habits, when you are trying to get discipline, having a board of directors or friends that keep you accountable is super important. So for me, outside of actual board of directors, I use our vast members from the organization that I just mentioned. These are women that will cheer me on, will help me play at the next level, right? Will challenge me to play at the next level. But more importantly, they love me or care enough about me that they're willing to call my bluff. And they're willing to keep me accountable if I'm not meeting my goals or if I'm not true to my values and my North Star. And then, one question that I want you to ask yourself too, constantly as you're building your startup is, why are you building? And how are you building it? Because if the how you're building it and the why is misaligned, that could actually keep you off track. To give you an example, a lot of the women that just pitched, and I feel bad for Bill and I forget the other, Nita, right? The judges, I feel bad for them because they were great pitches and they have to do a lot. And I'm an investor, so I'm not speaking ill of investors or anything. But if you're seeking investment, oftentimes as investors, we'll give you our feedback and we tell you what we think. But if you're truly building something that matters to you, nobody should know more about your company than yourself. So you constantly have to go back to the drawing board and your vision board to see, hey, am I still going in the direction that I planned? And most importantly, looking at the bridge. Am I building it the way I said I was going to build it? That is super important to make sure that it's still attached to your core values. And even if you get investment, even if you get a board of directors, even if you get customers that you end up firing, it's going to be easier for you to do it if you stay true to yourself and true to what you want to build. And just make sure that it's aligned with your personal values and where you want to go from there. Last and not least, I'm trying to make up for time because I know we're running out of time. But last and not least, I don't want you to attach your identity to the success of your startup. I can't tell you, again, I've been doing this even before venture capital. I did it with private equity. And I will tell you that a lot of us founders often attach ourselves and our identity to our startup. But what happens if our startup fails, right? What happens if even if you're not a founder, what happens if your role changes? What happens if your company lets you go? What happens if your company goes away? You yourself are more than your startup. And your startup is bigger than you, right? If you're really building that high growth startup, it's going to outgrow you. So you need your personal identity not to be so attached to a role or a job. And just remember that your past, whether it's your past success or your past failures, don't necessarily dictate or predict your future success. So again, just protect your identity, really get core to your values and your core mission, so you don't get persuaded with burnout or comparing yourself to others or get caught up in the whole hustle mode. And with that, again, I was trying to go super fast. Hopefully, Denise, Mandy, I made up for some of the time that we lost, which I rather give to the pitches and the women founders. But if we have time, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you for everyone that kind of chatted with me on the chat. Thank you for sharing your best self characteristics and your worst self characteristics with me and for being vulnerable there.
Well, thank you, Erika. Yeah, and we do have time for probably just maybe one question if somebody has something they want to put it in the Q&A box. People are probably typing super fast right now.
Yeah.
You're getting some very nice messages in there.
Well, just reminding self-care and focus. It really is important. I mean, nowadays, one of the reasons I started Best is women, one out of four women are either downsizing their career or exiting the labor force in general, right? Because of burnout. And by the way, if you're a mother, especially of young children, the number jumps to 3 out of 4 women are exiting the workplace and or downsizing careers. So this is personal for me. That's why thank you, Denise. Thank you, the team, for allowing me to talk about something that, usually I don't. Usually I talk about tacticals, like how to pitch investors, how to talk to investors, all of that. But I just feel like this is actually a lot more important. We can't take care of others. We can't build successful companies and sustainable companies if we're not taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Such a great message. Well, thank you so much, Erika. We're so happy to have you as our speaker.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Brittany, and everyone in the team. Good luck to the contestants. I'm going to stay here and see what happens.
Absolutely. Thank you.